We are back with the team from Oasis Crescent Advisory Services, Ebrahim Rawoot, Mansoor Mia and Salima Modik, and we're continuing the discussion around wealth building. Welcome back with the wealth managers from Oasis, Ebrahim, Salima and Mansoor. We are discussing demystifying the world of investments. Elaborating fund diversification further. Let's start off firstly with the first aspect Mansoor had talked about, Salima, asset diversification. What is that and how important is that in terms of the overall diversification?
Hassan, asset diversification refers to spreading your capital amongst the three most popular classes of assets, which is your equity or your stock market, property, which is listed property, as well as cash, which is income, cash in the bank, as well as your sukuk type of or your sukuk markets. It allows you to spread your risk amongst three asset classes in that equities are your highest risk, property more medium, and cash or income your lowest risk. When markets run, equities provide you with the best type of returns, and when markets fall, cash and property would provide you with the best type of protection. And it's about marrying and creating that finer balance.
Sure. Ebrahim, maybe in terms of sector diversification, how important is that in terms of the overall diversification?
Sure.
process?
I think, Hassan, when you look at sector diversification, and that adds on to what Salima mentioned, the three asset classes. When you look at equities, you look at the stock market, and it is where your investment manager is identifying certain sectors within the equity market. So when we look at sectors, you look at industrials, you look at resources, you look at healthcare, you look at telecommunications, you look at technology, you look at construction, and that is only but to mention a few. So you might have one asset class called equity, but within that equity sector, you've got a whole range of sectors that you can look at. Then the second asset class, which is property. Now here you've got different sectors that you can invest in. So you can buy a physical property, whether it is your residential property, an office block, a commercial property, an industrial park. You could even buy into an investment property where you buy an apartment, rent it out and generate rental as a form of return. And then ideally, you also want to invest in a listed property. And that listed property is where you're buying shares of a company that is going to invest in those high quality industrial and office and commercial properties. Then the last asset class, which is your income market, and here it could be cash or savings. It could even be investments across different Islamic sukuks or the shorter term Islamic instruments which are trading on a murabaha or mudaraba principle. So Salima very rightfully mentioned the three asset classes being equity and property and income. Now we've added a second form of diversification, which is sector, and you can just see how we're diversifying the risk within that portfolio.
Sure. Mansoor, I think coming to the point around geography and currency. Now, obviously being in the tip of Africa, we obviously South Africans, we can invest offshore. How important is it to diversify assets from a geographic perspective, but also very importantly from a currency perspective?
Hassan, geographic diversification is you as an investor is given the opportunity to not only invest in one stock market, but various stock markets across the world. If we take some, for example, South Africa, we mentioned the All Share Index. In the US, you've got the Nasdaq, the S&P 500, the Dow Jones. Europe, you've got the FTSE, German DAX, and then in Asia, you've got the Nikkei. What geographic diversification gives you, maybe using a nice example would be, if we take South African market, let's look at two sectors, the pharmaceutical sector and the technology sector. Sectors that are relatively small in the South African stock exchange, but if you open that to global stock markets, the universe of shares that a fund manager can expose himself to in those global stock exchanges is huge, and the potential for, they are leaders within those sectors, the pharmaceutical technology. To name but a few, if we look at the IT sector, IBM, Microsoft, from the pharmaceutical sectors, Johnson & Johnson, Pfizer Pharmaceuticals, they are leaders within those sectors. which we in the South African market don't have exposure to as a fund manager. Leaving geographic diversification, an equally important form of diversification would be currency diversification. A simple example would be if we take the rand to the dollar. 2008, the rand to the dollar was sitting around 7 rand. Today we're at around 10, 10.50. Now the softening of the rand from 7 rand to 10.50, that alone is a 50% return from currency and currency alone. And the way one gets exposure to currency diversification is by investing in shares from various stock markets, be it the Dow Jones, S&P 500, and currency diversification would come in the form of pound, sterling, yen, etc. So equally as important as the other three levels of diversification, currency diversification is as equally as important.
I think to conclude, it's important that we are educating the viewers out there as well. From your perspective, what advice do you have for our women viewers out there?
Hassan, there are many families headed up by women across all ethnic diversities. We cannot stress the importance of being financially independent, of a woman being financially independent. There's no, as the words of a song go, no romance without the finance. Ladies, we urge you to make contact with an accredited financial advisor today to start off your investment, whether it may be on a monthly basis or whether it's a lump sum. Like we said earlier, it's about time in the market as opposed to timing the market.
So ladies, remember, I think the dowries that they have, or the birthday gifts that they get, or even the anniversary presents that their husbands give them, I think it's good advice that you said, making sure that they investing it wisely and making themselves financially independent.
Absolutely.
I'd like to thank our panel, Ebrahim, Salima and Mansoor, for joining us and giving us important insights into the world of investments and addressing, I think, key aspects which many investors are not wary or do not understand, such as inflation, how it impacts them in their ordinary lives, and very importantly, how it impacts their quality of life as well. And aspects also such as diversification and looking at aspects in terms of asset classes, sector diversification, geographic and currency as well. I think firstly the panel hopefully will address further issues around investments in the weeks to come as well. I'd like to thank you once again. Until we meet again, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Well, we've come to the end of our show. Many thanks to our guests. Firstly, the investment team from Oasis Group Holdings, Michael Swingler, Ismail Ebrahim and Fahad Sheikh, and then the wealth managers from Oasis Crescent Advisory Services, Ebrahim Rawoot, Mansoor Mia and Salima Modik. If you'd like to find out more about Oasis and the products being offered, please contact us on 0860 100 786, or you can visit our website on www.oasiscrescent.com. Until next week, same time, same place, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.